Give me a minute, I'll share my screen. So can you all see the PPT?
Yes, ma'am.
So yesterday we have discussed about work teams and communication, right? In communication, we have discussed about direction of communication, functions of communication, and flow of communication, as in direction of communication. In today's class, we'll be starting with interpersonal communication. So when we are talking about interpersonal communication, it is the transfer of meaning or information between two or more individuals. So this interpersonal communication can be done in three ways. One is oral communication, the other one is written communication, and the next one is non-verbal communication. So talking about oral communication, any communication which includes speech, discussions, either it might be formal or informal discussions, rumors, gossips, etc. So when we are talking about this oral communication, it takes very minimal amount of time in order to communicate, as in order to transfer information, because the person would be able to hear you, and this is just about talking, right? Oral communication is that you communicate information via talking or speaking, right? So and also in oral communication you can get immediate feedback. You will be knowing whether the receiver has understood the message as you have said in the way you said. Okay, and also if it is a chain of communication wherein if there are many levels of hierarchy in an organization, as in boss, many levels of managers, sub managers, team leads, then employees, if there are many hierarchies in an organization, many levels of hierarchies, then what happens is that when we are using oral communication, the information might get distorted, because every individual understand the information in different ways. They have their own perceptions, right? So when it comes to from boss to managers, managers to team leads to employees, till the information reaches the employees, there is a chance of information getting distorted. Okay, this is about oral communication. So then coming to written communication. So can you tell me what is the difference between oral and written communication?
Written is something that we can refer even after later sometime, or oral is like once we say, and depending upon our perception, we can retain what is important to us, and we might leave out what is not necessary.
Yes.
So the complete information may not be transferred to others when it is through oral communication, whereas written is something like evidential and you have everything written there.
So when we are talking about written communication, we can use letters, fax, emails, text messages, instant messages, etc. So when we are using written communication, it is storable. You can store it for indefinite time, and you can go back and refer to it. It is verifiable. Whatever you have communicated, you are able to check it. Okay, and also this written communication is useful for complex understanding of information, and also lengthy communication, as in, for example, if you wanted to refer these particular information after years, then you can use this, as in, for example, if you are yes.
I'm sorry.
So if you want, for example, if you are planning to build, okay, you are planning to build a house or something, you are planning for it, and if you note down what all you are planning and write it, then refer to it after years, you will be knowing what was your initial plan and at what stage are you to complete your plan. Everything would be evidential, verifiable, and storable, right? And also when we are talking about oral communication, it is very spontaneous, right? When the other individual speaks to you, you speak without thinking. Whatever comes to your mind, it is very much spontaneous and fluent, right? So when we are talking about written communication, first you will be reading the message of that another individual, you'll try to understand it, you'll try to reflect on the message, then after giving a good thought, then you will be replying to that message, right? So whenever you do communication in written format, it would be clear, logical and well thought. And also written communication is time taking, right? So what happens when, if you wanted to talk the same information, you would be talking it in 15 minutes, but you can't write it in 15 minutes, right? It takes nearly 45 minutes to write the same information, so it is time consuming. And also we don't understand whether the receiver has understood the message as whatever we said, did the receiver interpreted it correctly or not. It takes time to receive feedback from the receiver. So that is about written communication. So when we are talking about oral and written communication, they can be considered as part of verbal communication. Written communication sometimes can also be non-verbal communication, because you use different types of emojis and all, right, which helps you in emotional expression. Then we'll be going to non-verbal communication. So non-verbal communication includes your body postures, physical distance, gestures, facial expressions, etc. So whenever you are using this non-verbal communication or focusing on the non-verbal communication, whenever you observe the body posture of the individual, if you see that the person is leaning or something or just sitting freely, then you'll be able to understand whether the person is interested in your communication or not. Is he listening to you or not, right? So you'll be able to understand whether they are interested or whether they are in another zone. You'll be able to understand their emotional state. Whenever you know you are looking at the non-verbal communication, non-verbal cues, you will be able to know whatever the other individual is trying to hide, right? For example, the words they are saying might be different and their actions show something different. So whenever you are looking at the non-verbal cues, you will be able to understand their hidden emotions in it. And also it gives intensified and deeper meaning to the spoken words. So this is all about interpersonal communication. Clear, right? Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
So then we'll be talking about organizational communication. So whenever we are talking about organizational communication, it can be divided into two types. One is formal communication and the other is informal communication. So talking about formal communication, it can be further divided into three main types, which include chain communication, wheel communication, all channel communication. Talking about informal communication, it can be divided into grapevine communication. So let us understand what is chain communication. You all can see the picture here, right? Can you all see the picture?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
So in the chain communication, what happens is that the information passes through all the levels of hierarchy. You can't skip any level of the hierarchy, as in there would be a boss, then the information would be passed to managers, and from the managers the information would be passed to employees. Then from the employees the information again will be passed to managers, and from managers to the boss.
Like vertical communication.
Yes, vertical communication, both upward and downward communication involves chain communication. This is about chain communication. Coming to wheel, in wheel what happens is that there is only one leader, and from that one leader everyone receives the information. So even manager receives information from the boss, and also the employee receives information from the boss. Likewise, the employees can directly communicate with the boss and managers can directly communicate with the boss. Understood, right? There is only one leader, and that leader communicates all the information to team leads, managers, employees, etc. Talking about all channel communication, what happens is that every individual can communicate with each. The boss can communicate with employees, the employees can communicate with manager. There is no leader in this. Everyone can communicate with each individual in the organization. So what do you think? Which of these styles would be useful? Is there any particular style which would be useful?
All channel, ma'am.
All channel.
In my opinion.
Okay. Any other opinions?
Ma'am, depending on the type of the group and organization, certain things has to be chosen. If formal works, then formal.
Yes.
Or informal works, informal.
So when we are talking about which is good, it would be depending on the situation and the structure of the organization. For example, if you want accurate information, then you will be going for chain communication. If you are very much dependent on your leader and you trust your leader, then you will be going for wheel communication style. So if you wanted job satisfaction, satisfied in your work and everything contented with your job, then you will be going for all channel communication because your opinions are being valued and you can communicate your opinions easily with everyone. Right? That is about formal communication. So when we are talking about informal communication, it includes grapevine communication. So when we are talking about grapevine communication, you see, right, in many of the organizations, not only in organizations, but also outside of organization, you see very informal communication, as in you hear about rumors, right? There would be rumors, gossips, all that information would be coming under grapevine communication. So for example, do you think rumors would affect something in the organization? Would it affect the environment in the organization?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, right. So in what ways does that rumor affect?
Can create some negative impact or
Yes. So whenever there are rumors, right? For example, if an employee is working in certain company and he is friend of another employee, so he comes to join, he gives an interview. So he would be listening to the words of the employee and get influenced whether to join or not. So rumors hold very influence on the other individual, right? So they would be deciding whether to join the company or not, whether to continue with this interview or not. Everything would be decided based on the rumor shared by his or her friend, right? And also if any of the rumor comes to the organization, as in the organization listens any of the rumors in that particular organization, so the management has to take care of that because it might lead to chaos if it is not managed. Everything the organization or the management can't be taken care of, but if it is at a very high level or it is creating panic in the employees, as in for example when we're talking about IT companies, when the news of layoffs or something comes up, right, recession, layoffs, everything comes up, so the employees would be in a state of panic. So in such situations, the organization or the management should come and clear that rumor, whether it is true, to what extent the rumor is true or not. Okay. So that is all about grapevine communication. Clear about formal and informal styles of communication?
Yes, ma'am.
So then we'll be talking about electronic or computer aided communication. So whenever in order to communicate, if you use computer or any other electronic means, that type of communication is called as electronic communication. So some of the important types of computer aided communication includes sending emails, text messaging, instant messages, blogs, social networking sites, and video conferencing. Let us look at emails. So do you think emails are we use in organizations, emails are primary source of communication, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So do you think emails are influential? They are useful? If useful, to what extent?
The
Okay.
reports and everything, whatever they have,
for
is
internal
it will be a
operations, it is very useful for the communication.
Yes. So whenever we are talking about emails, right, there is no face-to-face interaction, and also it takes very minimal amount of time to send emails. You will type the message, whatever you want to send, and in just one click, you will be able to send that email to whoever responsible, whoever the receiver it might be, you'll be sending it to the receiver. So what happens is that email is good, but there are also many disadvantages for email. There would be delayed feedback, right? You won't be knowing whether the receiver has received the email, whether they checked the email, whether did they understand it correctly, whether there is any misperception or something. So there has been research regarding these emails in an organization wherein it has been seen that only 50% of the times the employees would be able to correctly perceive the information. The other 50% of the time, either they would be perceiving the information distortedly or misperceiving the information. So these might be the disadvantage of email. And also there would be privacy concerns, right? If you don't want the message to be seen or the information to be seen by others, then you have to be very careful while sending emails, because that email might not be seen by the concerned person. It can also be shared to the other persons, or it can be shared with the other employees who might not be receiving that email, right? So that would also be one of the problem in emails, as there is it is not the face to face expression and something. You can't see the emotional expression of the person, in which tone or something. You can't perceive the correct tone, correct expression of the message. And also if you wanted to communicate something negative, as in if you wanted to communicate regarding layoffs or resignation or demoting any of the employees, you can't promote it using emails, because what happens is that there would be misperception, misinformation, everything comes into picture. So these are the drawbacks of email. Then we will be moving to text messaging and instant messaging. So when we are talking about text messaging, we would be using our mobile phones, any portable devices in order to send text messages. Instant messaging, you can send it by using computer, electronic devices, etc. So when we use text messages and instant messaging is that only when the message is very small, that is only 1 to 2 lines. So when the message is 1 to 2 lines, then only you will be using text messaging or instant messaging. If there is long message to send to the receiver, then email would be the best option to use. Then and also whenever you are using or involved in text messaging and instant messaging, you use portable devices, right? So that would be very distracting. You will be using it, you will be distracted with other apps and messages, etc. in portable devices. And also many of the formal organizations, the managers wanted to formal communication over emails rather than messaging and text messaging or instant messaging, because it's very informal. They feel that it is very informal kind of communication if you text message or instant message them. So they prefer email as formal means of communication in organizations. So whenever we are talking about social networking sites, right? In these days, social networking site has also become the means of communication. So there are many social networking sites wherein people use to share information with each other, right? Like Facebook, Instagram, everything. They share information, different kinds of information. When we are talking about organization, even organization can use LinkedIn, Indeed, job searching platforms, right? Even they would be using social networking platforms like LinkedIn, Indeed, such type of platforms. And also whenever you are using these social networking sites, you should be very useful, because there are also unconcerned individuals, right, on the social networking platform. So you have to see whether you wanted to post this information or not, whether you are posting it to the internet persons, concerned persons, or you are sharing it to everyone who are not concerned with it. So you have to be very careful in that the information with which you are sharing in the social networking sites. Then talking about video conferencing. So do you think video conferencing is the essential means of communication?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, right. So video conference, even though if the individual is not in front of you, you won't be able to have face-to-face interaction, right? Still using video conferencing, you can have real-time interaction. You can see them, you can see their non-verbal cues, you can observe them, right? So this also helps in looking at the emotional expression of the individual. So this is all about electronic or computer aided communication. So can you tell me some of the barriers to communication, effective communication? Anyone? What can be barriers to effective communication?
Proper language, proper expression.
Lack of clarity in the communication.
Interest of the participant or the student.
Yes.
Environment.
Yes.
Environmental factors also, ma'am.
Silence.
So now we'll be looking at some barriers to effective communication. If these barriers exist in communication, then the communication won't be that effective. So the first one would be filtering. So when we are talking about filtering, this is the intentional manipulation of the information by the sender. For example, what happens in an organization if there are many levels of hierarchy, right? And also there would be status differences and everything. So when there is status differences, when there is fear of boss or fear of anything, or if you wanted to please your boss in an organization, what you do is that instead of saying what you feel, you'll be saying or communicating the information what they are expecting from you. Okay, you won't be sharing your opinions, but you will be sharing something which they wanted to hear from you. Understood, right? Intentional manipulation of information by the sender is filtering. As in order to please your boss, you might be, even though the new technology which have been launched by the company might not be that good, but you would be telling the information or giving the information to the boss that it is gaining importance in the society or something, that technology is being used by wide users or something. You would be giving information in order to please your boss, right? So that is about filtering. Then we would be going to selective perception. So can anyone tell me what is selective perception? Just a random guess or something?
Whichever that people are interested, they take only such kind of communication.
Yes. So what happens is that even it is oral communication, written communication or anything, whatever the individual will be having different opinions, different values, different ethics, right? Each individual will be different from the other individual. They have different opinions, different values, right? Different ethics. They have been raised in different cultures. So the thought process would be different. For example, any one of the individual has that women should be giving only priority to the family but not to the jobs. If one individual is holding that opinion and he or she is in the position of HR, okay, so one lady comes to an interview and she would be telling all the answers, giving all the answers perfectly, but the interviewer who is taking the interview has the opinion that women should be giving first priority to the family. So then what happens is that instead of the interviewer, the interviewee gave all the answers correctly, right? Instead of giving all the answers correctly, also she won't be getting selected because the interviewer has the opinion that women should be only concerned with household works but not the job. They would be giving primary concern to the family. So he or she had not liked that aspect in that woman or female. So she is not being selected. You only select or you perceive the information based on your opinions, your values, but you won't be looking at from their perspective, right? You won't be looking from the perspective of the sender. You'll be only receiving the message or any information from your point of view, your values, your ethics, right? So that is about selective perception. Then comes information overload. So when we are talking about overload, the perceiving or the information perception of an individual is not infinite, right? So we have finite processing ability. We don't have infinite processing ability. We can't process overall information at one particular point of time. We need gap between processing the information. We have only finite ability of processing information. So what happens if there is information overload, if you are receiving information which is beyond your processing capacity? So you won't be able to process even the information which you are able to process. So what happens in such cases? You have to either take a break from that information, or you have to you have to select which information is important to you, and you have to process that information. And also what happens is that you can pause for some time, you can keep it for later in order to process that information. So you have to see how to divide the information, which information to process for first and which to be kept for later processing. So that is one kind in order to remove these barriers. So then coming to emotions. So do you think emotions affect processing our communication or processing the information received?
Yes.
What role does emotion plays in communication? So there are
Our tone will change the scenario there. If our emotions are involved in while communicating.
Voice modulation.
It influences the person's behavior, madam.
yes. So whenever we are talking about emotions, there would be positive and negative emotions, right? So whenever if the individual is in the state of positive emotions, as in if he is happy, joy, everything, then what happens is that whatever information the individual receives, he or she feels that they are confident about the information received, and they have understood the information correctly. They are confident about the understanding of the information correctly. Whereas if the same individual in the state of negative emotion, they always try to scrutinize the information received, as in they try to carefully observe if there are any errors in the information received. They would be trying to carefully observe the information. So our emotional state, whether we are angry, happy, sad, everything would be influencing the way we receive information and we perceive information. So that is about
Yes.
emotions. Language. So tell me how language influences our communication.
Helps in providing the clarity of the communication.
Yes. So what happens is that as the generation changes, or for example, our fathers, right? Today in today's generation, even though the language is same, you will be using shortcuts, right? IDK, LOL, LOL. You'll be using different types of shortcuts, right? So the way of communication, the receiver might not be knowing the meaning of that word. IDK is I don't know. You know the meaning of that IDK, but the receiver won't be able to know that meaning, right? And also each word holds many different meanings. So for you, you would be sending that word with some other meaning. The receiver might be understanding the same word with the other meaning, right? So that is about language. So whenever you are sending a message or you are speaking orally, you should be careful with the words you use, and also you should make sure that the receiver has understood in the same way the way you have sent the information. So age and the context in which we are influences the language which we have. You have to look at the age range and also the context in which you are speaking, so that in that manner you have to use your language. Then comes communication apprehension. So when we are talking about communication apprehension, many of the times this happens with introverts and also sometimes ambiverts who will be having a social anxiety or something. So whenever you are asked to communicate, mostly it can be with oral communication, but it can also be with written communication and both. what happens is that if an individual is asked to communicate orally, they get very much tensed and they start avoiding the situation wherein they have to speak, they have to communicate orally, or they have to communicate with written communication. So what they do is that they will be looking for jobs wherein there is no oral communication required, or in whether there is no written communication required. They will be seeing for such jobs wherein they just have to work, do the task, and there would be no communication involved, because whenever they try to communicate or something, it makes them very tense, that it would be leading to anxiety, stress, etc. So that is about communication apprehension. Then we'll be going to lying or misinformation. So do you think giving false information or lying to the other individual would...
Ma'am, can you once again please explain the communication apprehension?
Yes. So when we are talking about communication apprehension, right? So in your class or something, you see some of the students, right? So they have very much social anxiety and stage fear, wherein they don't want to communicate orally, or even written communication. This communication apprehension is the undue, or what say, that they would be very much tense if they listen the word of oral communication or written communication, because they won't be able to communicate. They become very much anxious whenever they hear about communicating with others.
Is it stage fear or
It's not.
different one?
It
Stage
is not.
fear is part of this.
It is stage fear. Fear is part of this. This is not about stage fear. Anywhere they go, they don't want to communicate orally or written. Mostly this happens with oral communication, but can also be happen with written communication.
Means,
They
ma'am,
don't-
is it with group or with individual persons even?
Even with individuals. So they have that fear of communication. They don't want to communicate. They don't want to interact. Whenever they try to interact or something, they become very much anxious and tensed.
Means it's an individual kind of issue.
Yes, yes. Yes, that is the individual factor. It depends on the individual. Understood, right? Understood?
Thank you, ma'am.
So then we'll be moving to lying or misinformation. So do you think giving false information would affect communication process?
Yes, ma'am.
In what ways does giving false information affects?
It will change the
It will affect
perception.
the individual credibility or the organization
affect it.
credibility.
Yes. Yes. So the credibility, right? The organization's credibility, there would be some integrity, there would be some secrecy, right? So the info, and also whenever if you do something wrong, what an individual does is that they wanted to hide that information. In process of hiding that information, they would be leading them or the organization in other direction. So it would lead to total chaos or something. And do you think the person who is lying, is it easier to recognize them? Do you understand the person whether he or she is lying?
Not easy.
Not easy, right? So in previous or in the past times, it was easier because by looking at the individual's nonverbal cues, whenever if the individual is lying, they would be tensed or there would be pauses in their communication as such, right? But in today's world, everything has every individual has become very knowledgeable, wherein everyone knows that when you make an eye contact or when you maintain an eye contact, it means that you are stating the truth, right? So the one who is lying also know to manipulate the lie into the truth, right? So whenever if an individual maintains an eye contact, we would be thinking that they are stating the truth, right? So it is not easier for us to know whether the person is deceiving us or whether he is stating the truth. So if an individual lies or gives misinformation, then the topic or the communication will entirely go to different direction. So that communication won't be that effective. Then coming to cultural context. So how does cultural context influence communication? How does cultural context influence communication? So the culture in which you have raised, right? Each culture has different values, different ethics, and different ways of thought process, the way they communicate, everything would be different. And also in different cultures, there would be different meanings for the same word. So whenever you are communicating with the outside cultures, as in the culture which is different from your own, so there might be some types of errors or some types of misperception of information. So you have to be careful, and if you don't understand anything related to the other person's culture, it is very important for you to clear or know the meaning of that particular word, right? So these are some of the barriers to effective communication. Any doubts in barriers to effective communication?
Ma'am, lying and information again.
Yes. So what happens is that when you lie or something, for example, if an individual did something wrong in an organization, there is a rule that the whatever messages, even if it is important or not important, even it is about some type of ads or something, you shouldn't be sharing any information with the outsiders outside of the company, or to the even to the other employees. You shouldn't be forwarding or sharing it. So what happens is that you would be sharing the information with the other employees, or you would be forwarding that information. When your boss, they would be knowing that, and your manager comes and asks you, one of the messages forwarded from your mail or something. Then if you say that you have forwarded the message, but if you say I didn't forward that message, then the communication goes to the other direction, right? Then they would be looking in other ways who have access to your email. Then the communication goes in overall other direction, right? It has to go in some direction, but it is totally diverted to the other direction. So it is waste of time, and it is not effective communication. You are not communicating, you are not giving the correct information, right? So that is
Yeah,
about
okay.
lying. Any more doubts in this? Any more doubts? No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
We are done with our third block. We are done with our third block. Now we'll be moving to our fourth block. That is leadership. You all can see the slides, PPT?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
Yes,
It's
ma'am.
clear and visible.
So what do you mean by leadership? Whom do you consider as a leader? Whom do you generally consider as a leader?
Who motivates?
Who motivates?
With the one who can take the responsibilities for many and
Yes.
fights for the cause, something like that.
Who can lead the
Can
team?
control the team.
Lead the team.
Yes. So generally there would be different definitions for a leader. For every individual, the meaning of the leader would be different. But generally the leader is the leadership is the ability to influence, to inspire, to manage a group towards the achievement of set of goals. There would be different meanings for a leader or leadership. It would be based on the individual whom they would be considering as a leader. It would be different for different individuals. But generally, the one who has the ability to influence a group of people, to inspire them, to manage them, to motivate them, they are considered as leaders, right? So what happens is that there are many research studies on this topic in the area of organization and also in the area of organizational psychology. There has been vast research even from early 1900s or such things. So there were many different types of theories on leadership. So talking about different types of leadership theories, the first one comes great man theory. So what this theory states is that leaders are born but not made, right? Leaders are born but not made. According to great man theory or great person theory, leaders are born but not made. So talking about trait theories, these trait theories try to understand leader based on certain characteristics or qualities of an individual. And behavioral theories, they wanted to find out whether based on some certain behavioral dimension, they wanted to classify leaders. Talking about contingency theories is based on the situations, you need different types of leaders. As in, for example, there is a leader. A leader is good for situation X. Whereas when the situation changes to Y, A leader won't be that effective or efficient. We need B leader for situation Y. The same comes for Z. If the situation is Z, A and B won't be that effective in situation Z. Right? So we need other effective leaders. As the situation changes, the leadership style also has to be changed. The order goes in this way. First, research has been done based on great man theory. Then the research has been done on trait theories. Then it has gone to behavioral theories, and then comes contingency theory. So we'll be looking into each one of it in detail. So great man theory. So what happened is that previously in past, people used to believe that leaders are born, not made. As in, after the leaders are born, whatever the situation might be, they would emerge as leaders because they're already born as leaders. So what they thought is that genetics has a major role in making leaders. So genes plays an important role in making leaders. So, as in leaders are born, we can't be able to shape any leaders. After being born as an individual, they emerge as leaders, but we can't make other leaders because they have thought that genetics play a major role in making leaders born. Right? So, what happened? There has been many twin studies going on this topic in order to know whether leaders are born but not made. So what happened is that they found that only 30% of genetics play a role in the person becoming an leader. Only 30% of genetics. And the remaining 70% would be the remaining 70% would be
Environment.
environment. Yes. So,
Made.
yes. So the making of leaders would be dependent on both nature and nurture, right? It is both dependent on genetics and also as well as on our environment. Our genes, when it gets combined with the environmental factors, it would get shaped. And if that genes has been communicated with the correct, as in if the environment is correct, if the developmental factors has been good, then he or she emerges as a leader. If there is genes, 30% genes is present, but if you don't have a good environment in as in supportive environment to become a leader, then it might not be possible for you to become a leader. Right? Understood great man theory, right? So they only told that genetic plays an important role, but later it has been seen that only 30% of genetic plays a role when we are talking about leadership. Remaining 70% would be the role of environment. Understood, right? Great man theory.
Yes, ma'am.
Then we would be moving to trait theories of leadership. So, you know, what are traits? Traits?
Characteristics.
Qualities or characteristics of a person.
Yes. So it is, when we are talking about traits, we are generally talking about characteristics or qualities of an individual. So what happened is that even they believe that leaders, if they wanted to differentiate between effective and ineffective leaders, so they started the research in order to find out what traits that the effective leader has and what traits the ineffective leader has. So the research was to know whether the traits of effective individual and ineffective individual. Even after doing a vast research, they were not able to find out the traits of effective leader and ineffective leader. But they have found out that there are certain traits which make people leaders, and there are certain traits, as in there are trait differences between leaders and non-leaders. They were able to differentiate between traits of leaders and non-leaders, but they were not able to differentiate between ineffective leaders and effective leaders. So what happened is that there were vast research was carried, and what happened? So firstly, they were focusing on characteristic qualities. They used different scales in order to know. They gave different scales in order to mark. So what happened after combining and seeing all the studies, comparing all the studies, they found vast number of qualities. As in, from one study to the other study, they didn't find any comparison in the traits. Even though if they found the comparison, they found some 5,000 traits of comparison as such. As in, there are 5,000 traits. From that 5,000 traits, they can't be coming to some 5 traits or 1 traits in order to differentiate leaders from non-leaders. Then what happened is that there was a dead end for that trait theories. So then later what happened? So during this time there was development of big 5 factor theory. In personality theories, did you come across big 5 factor theory, personality theory?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, right? You have an idea about big 5.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So what happened during that time? This theory was developed, and researchers has started to organize the traits of leadership among the big 5 factors. Right. So when these big 5 factors came up and they started organizing the traits related to leadership with the accordance of big 5, then they have found that what are the big 5 factors? 5 factors. You have idea?
Yes, ma'am. Ocean, ma'am.
Yes. Can you tell me?
Openness, conscientiousness, extroversion,
Yes.
uh,
Neuro.
neuroticism,
Introversion also.
So they would be having the extremes, right? For neuroticism, it would be emotional stability. For extraversion, it would be introversion. But we would be talking about only the big 5 factors, which is ocean. That is openness, conscientiousness, extraversion, ocean, right? Openness, conscientiousness, agreeability, and all these are the 5 factors, wherein out of these 5 factors the researchers has found that whenever we are talking about leadership or how many our leaders they have researched, they have found that extraversion is the primary trait and important trait in the leader. Extraversion was found to be the important trait of effective leaders, right? Extraversion was found to be the primary trait, wherein in order to become an effective leader or emerge as a leader, the individual should have the trait of extraversion. If they are not extroverts, they won't be able to emerge as leaders, and they would become, even if they emerge as leaders, they won't be becoming the effective leaders. They might be becoming ineffective leaders. Right. Even conscientiousness and openness were also found to have strong relationship with leadership, but not more than extraversion. Talking about agreeableness and neuroticism, they were not found to have relationship. But talking about neuroticism has a negative relationship between leadership and neuroticism. What do you mean by negative relationship? What do you mean by negative relationship?
Which decreases the leadership quality, ma'am.
Yes, as if the leader has to be effective, then there should be low neuroticism. If there is high neuroticism, either the individual can't be the leader, even if he or she becomes a leader with the trait neuroticism high, then they won't be effective leaders, but they would be ineffective leaders. So when we are talking about effective and ineffective leaders, there are always individual differences. We have to note that there would always be individual differences, but they are talking about the most number of studies which they have observed. They have observed that extraversion has major impact. It has been important trait in leaders. Then comes conscientiousness and openness. And also
Ma'am, full form of ocean is openness, consciousness, and EAN is
extraversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism.
extraversion, agreeableness. Okay.
Openness, conscientiousness, extraversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. So the first one would. So do you think assertiveness? A leader should be assertive.
Yes, ma'am.
A leader should be assertive. So the assertiveness should be very high in a leader or very low, moderate.
Only sometimes, ma'am.
So they have also researched based on these factor, which is assertiveness. So what they found is that assertiveness is important for a leader, because whenever times comes, they have to be assertive, wherein they have to say no to something. Being accepting everything is not possible, right? So they have to assert themselves. But they also found out that if the assertiveness is on very high level, the leaders are not found to be that effective. But if the assertiveness is moderately high, then the leader has found to be effective. So the assertiveness should be in such a state that it should be moderately high but not very high. Right? So agreeableness and neuroticism doesn't have any relationship with leadership, but when talking about neuroticism, it has negative relationship, as in if there is neuroticism, either he or she can't emerge as a leader, or they can, even if they emerge, they would be ineffective leaders. So why do you think agreeable, if one is high on agreeableness, why he or she can't be becoming leader? Why do you think if agreeability, as in agreeableness, is high in an individual, why they can't be effective leaders?
Because there will be emotions involved in that.
Yes. So whatever, if the manager or someone is taking opinions, if there is a team lead or something, if they go on agreeing on whatever every employee says, it is not correct, right? As in, they are not giving their opinions, but taking only the opinions of the employees, and the leader can't consider opinions of all the employees. He or she should stick to one opinion. They have to take one direction. They can't go on agreeing on all the opinions they have, all the ideas they have, because at last they have to implement only one idea. They have to choose only one path to go, right? So that is the reason the effective leader should know on which factors the leader has to agree, in which situations they have to agree, and where they have to not agree to the demands or to the opinions of the employees or followers of that leader. So do you think every manager is a leader? Is every manager a leader?
No.
No, ma'am.
No. Right?
Oh, not necessary, but
Yes. So every manager is not a leader, but manager can try to become a leader having some certain types of traits or behavioral qualities. Right, having some sort of qualities, characteristics, traits, and having some sort of behaviors, he or she can become a leader. And also in order to accept them as leader or not, that would be in the hands of the followers. If the followers are able to follow or go with the opinion of that particular individual, then that particular individual can become a leader, right? And also the other important trait which had which had a significant effect on leader effectiveness is emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence. Previously, what happened is that in the past, whenever trait theories has been started researching, intelligence was given, IQ was given very much importance, as in the individuals who have high IQ was found to be leader. But what happened is that they have researched different groups. They went to different groups and they found out that in that group, the one with high IQ was not the leader, but the one with moderate IQ was the leader, and the one with high IQ would serve as the follower, wherein the one with moderate IQ will be taking opinions from the follower who would be having high IQ. This was the first finding when they have started researching about traits related to leadership, as in they have given importance to IQ. Then they when they started organizing around big five, extraversion, conscientiousness, openness was given importance. Then later they have been shifted to EI. EI is emotional intelligence. What do you mean by emotional intelligence?
To understand your emotion and understand other people in emotion.
Yes.
And it will be helpful for inter and interrelationship.
Yes. So when we are talking about emotional intelligence, there would be a factor called empathy in it. So when we are talking about empathy, it is understanding the other person not from our point of view, but from their perspective. You have to understand the individual being in the place of the individual, as in you have to understand the situation or the person from their perspective. That is about empathy. So if a leader has empathy, and also empathy is not equal to sympathy, right? Empathy is different from sympathy. When you are talking about sympathy, you are feeling for the employee, right? You are feeling for the employee or the other individual. When you are talking about empathy, you are trying to understand the situation without feeling, right? You are not getting affected by it, but you are trying to understand it from the receiver's perspective or the from the employee's perspective. You won't be showing sympathy, but you will be showing only empathy, right? And also when we are talking about emotional intelligence, it includes self-awareness, self-regulation, other awareness. You have to be aware of your own emotions and other emotions. As in, when you are a leader, you should be aware of your emotions and also your followers emotions. When you know about their emotions, when you are, and also emotional intelligence includes self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy, motivation, and social awareness. All these five factors includes emotional intelligence. What are the five factors? Can you tell me what are the five factors? Self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social awareness or social skills. All these five factors constitute emotional intelligence. When we are talking about factors,
yes,
it includes self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy, motivation, and social skills. So if you are high or moderate on all these skills, then you will be automatically high on emotional intelligence. When we are talking about emotional intelligence, you have to understand your own emotions, you have to understand other people's emotions, you have to be able to manage yours and other people's emotions. You have to understand other people's emotion from their point of view, from their perspective. You shouldn't be showing sympathy. You shouldn't be feeling for others, because what happens when you show sympathy, right? When you are not in that situation, you can only feel for that person. You'll feel sad. But when you are trying to be empathetic, you are trying to understand the person from his or her perspective, from their point of view, right? So that is about emotional intelligence. So the individuals who are high on emotional intelligence were also found to be effective leaders. Then, did you understand trait theories of leadership?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. First, what they did was their focus was on traits, and they stopped at the IQ. When they have found that the leader, even though if the leader doesn't have high IQ, even if they have moderate IQ, they can be leaders, and they would be taking suggestions from the followers who might be having high IQ. Then, after the big five has been introduced and they started organizing the factors among them, extraversion was the first factor which is important for a leader to emerge as a leader and also to be effective leader. And the next factors would be conscientiousness and open. So, do you think creativity plays an important role in leadership? Creativity.
Yes.
So when we are talking about openness, right, being being creative and trying for unique ideas, right? We are open to new ideas. We are open to novelty. As in, we are creative enough. So creativity also plays a major role in terms of leadership. A leader should also have creativity in him or her. Then the research was shifted to emotional intelligence.
Ma'am, 5 factors of emotional intelligence is self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy, social skills, and one more.
Motivation.
Motivation. Okay, thank you.
Ma'am, can you once again inform me about this neuroticism leadership?
Yes, the relationship between neuroticism and leadership.
Yes, ma'am. What is this neuroticism? Can you just tell me that?
Neuroticism is the person is always on an edge, anxious. He or she won't be having stability on its emotions. As in, when we are talking about neuroticism, the opposite side would be emotional stability. Here, when we are talking about neuroticism, the emotions won't be stable. They are always on an edge, tense, anxious. So these are some of the traits of neuroticism, right? So if the individual whom we are talking about as a leader, if that individual has neuroticism, what happens is that leadership and neuroticism always have a negative relationship. As in, if the leader is effective, he or she should be low on neuroticism, because effective leader can't be anxious on an edge. So when the individual is anxious, he or she can't be guiding others, right? They can't influence others, they can manage their followers, right?
Yes,
You
ma'am.
tell me, if the individual is anxious, is always in a hurry, just impulsive, takes decision whatever comes to your mind, so in such situations, can that individual be an effective leader?
No.
No, ma'am.
No, right? So that is the reason why neuroticism and leadership has a negative relationship, and that relationship is also on low. We don't consider these factors, agreeableness and neuroticism, in relationship with leadership, but we only, in the big five, we consider only extraversion, conscientiousness and openness being related to leadership.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
So then we'll be moving to behavioral theories of leadership, right? So when we are talking about behavioral theories of leadership, after looking at both great person theory or great man theory and trait theories, some of the theories thought that they are both trait theories and great man theory has focused mostly on traits and qualities, and they thought that leader is born but not made. But when we are talking of coming to behavioral theories, they believe that leader can be made. So there would be certain behavioral dimensions which makes the individual to become a leader. So they focused on behavioral dimensions in order to know some behavioral dimensions. They focused on that, and there are 3 different types of behavioral theories of leadership. Okay, so we'll be discussing one after the other. The first one is the Iowa leadership studies. The second one is Ohio State studies, and the third one is University of Michigan studies. Right? So there are 3 types of behavioral leadership theories, which include the Iowa leadership studies, Ohio leadership studies, and University of Michigan studies. So we'll be looking into all these 3 in detail. Okay. So what happened? The Iowa leadership studies, the name came because the study was conducted in the University of Iowa, which is in US. Okay. So in University of Iowa, there were this was conducted in the late 1930s, and it was conducted by Ronald Lippitt and Ralph K. White. Right? This study was carried out or conducted by Ronald Lippitt and Ralph K. White. They carried out this study under the direction of Kurt Lewin, and it is conducted in the University of Iowa. So the name came the Iowa Leadership Studies. So what happened? Ronald Lippitt and Ralph K. under the direction of Kurt Lewin, they gave 3 different types of leadership styles. Okay, one is autocratic leadership, the second one is democratic leadership, and the third one is laissez-faire leadership. So what happened they are in the university, right? So they have initiated hobby clubs. They have initiated hobby clubs, and they have divided the 3 groups, wherein for the one group there is an autocratic leader, for the other group there is democratic leader, and for the third group there is laissez-faire leader. So what happened? Let's understand what is autocratic leadership, democratic leadership, and laissez-faire leadership, right? So when we are talking about autocratic or authoritarian leadership, here the leader would be only concerned with directing. The leader won't be taking opinions of his followers, or he won't be listening to the followers. The final rule will be of the autocratic, as in dictatorship, right? In dictatorship, what happens? The leader would be giving all the instructions. He would be deciding what should be done and what shouldn't be done. Even in autocratic also it is same, wherein only the leader gives direction. He or she won't be listening to the followers. And in democratic leadership, you know democracy, right? What is democratic leadership?
Accepting the opinions of all the other group members, ma'am.
Yes. So what happens in democratic leadership? The individual or the leader takes in other group members or followers' opinion. After taking followers' opinion, there will be a mutual discussion, and then they will be coming to the final decision making. And also in this, each individual would be given importance, and the criticism or praise would be on objective. There would be any subjectivity or bias while giving praise or criticism. That would be always on objective basis. There would be some criteria whenever the leader gives criticism or else feedback. Then talking about laissez-faire leadership, here the leader is he or she won't be acting as leader. They would be giving complete freedom to the followers. They can do whatever they want. They can do wherever they go, whatever they want. They are free, right? The autonomy is at its highest level. The leader won't be concerned with his followers. He is just namesake leader. He won't be doing anything. He won't be concerned what are the followers doing. They can do whatever they want. That is about. So what happened? This study was initially started to know the relationship between aggressive patterns. They wanted to examine the aggressive patterns when the leadership style is of these 3 types, right? So there are 3 groups wherein they found out that if the group has autocratic leader, the followers has showed 2 types of behavior, which is aggression and also apathized, as in wherein they didn't show, they were neutral, they didn't show any emotion, either aggression, either they always remained calm, they didn't show any behavior. So that are the 2 types of reaction which they brought from when the leader is authoritarian or autocratic. I mean dictatorship, as in if he or she won't take any opinion or something. And also what they found is that the people who are calm in front of the leader in autocratic leadership, after the leader is left, or if he or she is not in the room, even they showed aggressive behavior because they are frustrated to another level. So that is about autocratic leadership. And in the next group, what happened when we are talking about democratic leadership? Either they didn't show aggression, either they were not calm. They are in the middle stance. Talking about laissez-faire leadership, what do you think? The followers in laissez-faire leadership under that leader, would they show aggressiveness or not? They were given full freedom. They can do whatever they want. So would their aggression be higher or lower?
Yes.
Lower. Lower,
Yes,
because they are allowed to do whatever they want.
lower. Lower or higher? I didn't get you. Sorry.
Lower.
Okay.
Lower.
Okay. So we think that the aggression would be lower, like because they have given full freedom and they can do whatever they want. But what the studies have found out that out of all the three forms, from the third group, that is when the leader is laissez-faire, they have shown extreme aggressiveness in the task. Whatever they perform, they have shown extreme aggressiveness. The members of the team has shown excessive aggressiveness. So the third group was high on aggression. Then comes the first group, that is the autocratic leader, and then comes democratic leader. So what happened is that this study has been started in order to know whether there is a relationship between aggression and styles of leadership. So they didn't focus on knowing the performance. They didn't examine whether there is a relationship between leadership styles and performance. So these results can't be generalizable, as they did the study only on that university students, and they only took certain people and divided them into three groups and then give different types of leaders. Right, so it can't be generalizable because the participants are selective and only from that university. It can't be generalized. Even though they did it to see aggression patterns and something, they have showed that different leadership style brings out different and complex reaction in either same or similar groups. We have seen, right, when we are having different leadership styles on the same group or different group, there would be different and complex reaction. So leadership styles have an effect on the reaction of the followers of that group. Understood the Iowa leadership studies? Any doubts in Iowa leadership studies? No doubts? Or doubts?
No, ma'am.
No doubts, ma'am.
No.
Then we'll be moving to Ohio state studies. So when we are talking about Ohio state studies, this name has come up because the study has been carried out by Ohio State University. So what happened after the Second World War? The Bureau of Business Research at Ohio State University initiated a series of studies on leadership. They started studying, researching about leadership, and they took they used a questionnaire called Leader Behavior Description Questionnaire.
Slide
Right?
is different, I think.
Yes.
University of Michigan Studies System.
We are particularly now talking about Ohio State studies.
Ah, yes.
No, both slides are there, ma'am. Both are there. Ohio and Michigan, both are there.
Yes, it is on the same slide, but we would be dealing with Ohio State studies first, then we will be moving to University of Michigan studies.
It is not with.
Sorry?
That slide is not able to.
You are not able to view Ohio State studies?
Yes, I was.
Is it visible or not?
What
Now,
about
maybe
others?
you tilt your screen, maybe you make it like horizontal phone, or if you're seeing on phone.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem, madam.
Yes.
It is okay.
Thank you.
Okay, madam. You carry on.
Visible, ma'am, visible.
So Multidisciplinary team, as in researchers from psychology, sociology, and economics, came together and used leader behavior description questionnaire in order to analyze leadership behaviors. Right. So they did this research on wide number of people. They have analyzed many different groups in order to know. Different dimensions, behavioral dimensions of leadership. After analyzing, they did many different studies from on many different people, as in they took navy, army, normal people, students, right? They have examined everyone and they gave that questionnaire in order to answer according to them what can be the behavioral dimensions of leadership. After analyzing all the questionnaires, they have found out that leadership can be described based on two behavioral dimensions. So they gave two behavioral dimensions, that are initiating structure and consideration. So out of they have done wide range of research. All the researchers came together. They have used a questionnaire called, you can see, right, this questionnaire, leader behavior description questionnaire. They have used that in order to know, they have given the people in order to describe leader according to them. So after analyzing all the students, as in meta-analysis has been done, because there are many studies, right? So after the qualitative and quantitative analysis of meta-analysis was done, then they came up with two factors, which includes initiating structure and consideration. So when we are talking about initiating structure, the leader would be very much oriented towards the task. He or she would be initiating, as in he or she would be directing, giving instructions, setting goals. Everything would be related to task. He or she is oriented only towards the completion of the task. He would be initiating, giving instructions, everything the leader would be doing. Then when we are talking about consideration, the leader would be mostly oriented towards his or her employees, as in the employees and the leader would be having mutual trust, respect, and also the leader would be listening to the opinions and taking the opinions of his subordinates or followers, and then coming to the decision. He would be considerate towards his followers. He would be considering the opinions of the followers. He would be respecting. There would be mutual trust and respect between the followers. So they found out that for a leader, either the leader would be from initiating structure or the leader would be from consideration. Right? Understood Ohio State studies?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Then we will be moving to University of Michigan studies. Even at the same time when Ohio State studies were being conducted, the researchers from Survey Research Center at the University of Michigan began their studies of leadership. At the same time when the Ohio State studies are being conducted, at the same time even they have also been conducted studies related to research. So their focus was to locate behavioral characteristics of leaders that appear related to performance effectiveness. So they wanted to see whether there are any behavioral characteristics related to performance effectiveness. What type of leader behavioral characteristics of dimensions would lead to effective performance of the followers. Then after analysis of their study, what they did is that they had taken some 20 or 12 pairs of groups, wherein in each pair there are high scoring groups and high performance groups and low performance groups, right? So they have found out that in each pair, as in they have taken 12 such pairs, as in there would be 12 high scoring employees group and 12 low scoring employees group. So what they have found out that when they are analyzing the high production group, they have found out that the leader has been employee oriented. So they came up with two different dimensions, that is employee oriented leader and production oriented leader. Right? So when we are talking about employee oriented leader, the leader who emphasizes on interpersonal relationship, mutual trust, he would be considering individual opinions, and also he knows that every individual is different. So based upon the skills and abilities of that particular employee, what the leader does is that he would be allocating roles based on the abilities of that employee. When we are concerned with production oriented leader, he or she doesn't look at the abilities or something. He would be giving tasks, goals, he would be giving that task and goals, he just would be focusing only on completing that task or accomplishing goals. So when they have analyzed these high scoring productive groups and low scoring productive groups, they have found out that in high scoring productive groups, what do you think, in high scoring production groups, which type of leader would be there? Wherein for that group the production was higher. In such groups, which type of leader would be there? Employee oriented or production oriented? No idea. So when we are talking about
Production oriented.
Employee oriented.
yes, so in the high scoring, as in the groups wherein there was high performance, after analyzing 12 pairs of such groups, they have been found out that the group which is producing maximum performance of outcomes, the leader was employee oriented. Right? The leader was employee oriented, and in low scoring groups most of the time the leader was production oriented. So why do you think in most of the high producing groups the leader was employee oriented? Why was the performance higher?
Because he shows the empathy towards the employees.
Yes, what happens is that he would be taking inputs from the employees and also allocating roles based, that every employee is different, every follower is different, right? So and also knowing their abilities, based on their abilities he is allocating the roles. When the roles are based on their abilities, they can finish the task with maximum efficiency, right? So it has been shown that the results were the outcomes were very effective and efficient. So when we are talking about employee-oriented leader, can we consider this with Ohio State Studies consideration? Yes, right?
Yes, ma'am.
We can compare employee-oriented leader with consideration leader in Ohio State Studies. Likewise, production-oriented leader can be compared with initiating structure in Ohio State Studies. So this is all about, all these three include behavioral studies, wherein they have found out which different types of behavioral dimensions would be leading to which type of leaders, and does that leaders would be having any effect on performance or not. This was related behavioral theories of leadership. Understood, right? Any doubts in all these theories of leadership or in communication which we have discussed earlier?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am. Thank you.
No doubts, right? If you have any doubts, please ask.
No, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Done? Everyone understood the class? No doubts?
Ma'am, you said you will be sharing the PPT.
Yes, I'll be sharing to one of your classmates. They'll be sharing it in your group, okay?
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, then you all can.
Ma'am, a small doubt, ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, when will be the recorded classes will be shared, ma'am? All the classes?
I have no idea. Please
Okay, ma'am.
contact the university.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Ma'am, it is live streamed and we can save the link.
Yes?
Yes, it is live streamed and we can save the link, ma'am.
I didn't get you.
University is not going to share the link to us. We have to take it from the YouTube. It is already in the live stream, the classes.
Okay.
No, the classes which are going on today and yesterday are already on YouTube, she's telling. So we can get it on YouTube with the link.
Okay, ma'am. Some of my friends are asking, so I have asked.
Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Today's class was very good.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Bye.